Okay, we might get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the second of our COVID-19 and Community Sports Series forums. I think we had about 50-odd people tune in for our first session last Thursday, where we discussed financial management for community sporting clubs, and it's great to see many of you join us again for tonight's forum. This evening, we have representatives from clubs and associations from right across the state join us, which is quite exciting, and hopefully you can all take a bit out of the session. For those of you who don't know me, and I imagine that's most of you, my name is Ryan Evans. I work for Gipps Sport, which is a regional sports assembly based in Gippsland, and I'm hosting tonight's forum on behalf of Regional Sport Victoria. I'd like to begin tonight's session by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Victoria and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who might be with us this evening. So tonight's forum, Planning for Community Sport, The Time Is Now, is part of a series of workshops that have been developed by staff from Regional Sport Victoria. Regional Sport Victoria, or RSV, as it's commonly abbreviated, is the peak body which supports 9 independent organisations across regional Victoria. These 9 organisations are known as regional sports assemblies, and they're charged with the critical role of supporting the sport and recreation sector with their regional catchment. The RSV cluster is the only agency in Victoria that supports locally based community sport and recreation provision on a statewide basis. This support involves the provision of training, information sessions such as this one, advice, skill development, linkages and advocacy with and for clubs and organisations and communities. RSV and the 9 regional sports assemblies work directly with 48 local government authorities in Victoria, and RSV covers a population of over 1.5 million rural and regional Victorians and has a network of over 8,500 community-based sport and recreation clubs. Now, I don't want to talk too much before I introduce you to our presenter this evening. Before I do hand you over, though, I just wanted to acknowledge that many of you have already sent some questions in, which we'll endeavour to answer this evening. As we have quite a sizable audience tonight, we will be muting everybody's microphone. However, if you do have any further questions, then please feel free to send them through via the chat function. If you're using a computer or laptop, you'll find that chat function is on the toolbar and you can access this by clicking the speech bubble. If you're using the phone, I believe the chat function can be accessed to the top right corner of the screen via the same speech bubble. As your host, I'll be keeping track of the questions and comments. I'll then pose the questions to Michelle after she finishes her presentation, which will run for about 25 minutes. Also, feel free to use the chat function to say hi and let us know where you're from, as it could be great to see what clubs and associations we have with us tonight. So we're only here for an hour at the most this evening, so let's get straight into it. Our presenter this evening is Michelle Harris. Michelle is our senior sports consultant at Gipps Sport, where she has worked for almost 4 years. She's based in Inverloch in the Bass Coast Shire and works broadly across Gippsland, delivering planning projects with local sporting clubs, recreation reserve committees, local governments and state sport and associations. Michelle heads Gipps Sport's strategic planning arm, Gipps Sport Community Solutions, and is currently developing the Gippsland Basketball Participation and Elite Pathways Plan, amongst other projects. She also leads our Changing Gippsland's Game Women's Leadership Program, and you might also see Michelle running around the countryside as a keen trail runner or volunteering as an official for Swimming Victoria. So Michelle, I'll pass it over to you, but just quickly before I do, I'd just like to give everyone a reminder to please send any questions you might have throughout the night through the chat function, and we'll endeavour to get them answered over the next 45 minutes or so. So, Michelle, take it away.
That was a good start. I just realised that I was on mute. Sorry, everyone. So tonight we're here to talk about the planning for community sport. The time is now. This is my first live webinar presentation. I'm usually face-to-face with sporting clubs across Gippsland, and I'm used to having the interaction from our many members of these clubs that I'm working with. So it is unusual not seeing your faces, but please engage with us in the chat function as Ryan just described before, and I look forward to your questions a little bit later on. Hopefully tonight's session will give you some of the basic principles behind strategic planning and how that might be impacted by these current COVID-19 times. So I've got some slides that I'm going to work through now. So the why. Clubs have probably been told across the years, so committees or volunteers may have been asked to develop strategic plans when they've been asking for infrastructure grants or other sorts of programs. And clubs might also have strategic plans that might be out of date or now due for updating. Also, you might not have a strategic plan, but it's something that you're thinking about now as a way to develop the structure or the framework for what the club might look like moving forward. I've probably helped around 85 sporting clubs with the development of strategic plans, some large, some small, and they're all very different. So what a template that you might get off the shelf might not apply in all circumstances, but I really want to encourage you not to worry too much about the language. In times of uncertainty like what we're in right now, it's really important to think about what are the priorities. So we can waste a lot of time thinking about things that are outside of our control. So a strategic plan discussion or a planning discussion may help you focus your effort, both right now in the short term, thinking about what could be delayed or postponed to the medium term, and then the longer term ramifications as well. When developing a plan, it can also be important to think in simple messaging or simple terms about what it is that you're trying to achieve. So the why are we here? Why are we doing sport? Why are we operating as a committee? And thinking about that as the main purpose of your planning exercise. The reason for it can be described in the vision or mission. So the club itself, why do you exist? So it might be to deliver golf for your local region or district or community, or it might be to provide facilities or a community connection. And so those are the words you need to think about in terms of your purpose or your vision statement. Often strategic plans have value statements. So things that might be included in your value statements include responsibility, accountability, family friendly, a participation focus. And those value statements are directly linked to that purpose of why you're there and can help guide the framework for your strategic plan or the process that you're going through. Right now, a lot of us are worried about who is going to be there to drive the club. The small committee, the membership might be struggling, or you might not be sure about who the leaders may be. And this sort of exercise could help reinvigorate your committee to remember or connect with why they're there, and hopefully give you some energy to think about what could we do that could make a difference. And I know it could be you could be a parent of children and you want them to be physically active. You yourself have been involved with the club for many years and would be really sad to lose the history. Or you might be realising that a small town like yours will be really heavily reliant on the sporting club, and it's important that everyone stays together and connected. And volunteering, we also talk a lot about the need to feel valued. We need to have a purpose. So if we're going to give up our time, we want to know that it's worth our effort. Our time will be spent on worthwhile activities. And when you get some productivity or some success stories or runs on the board, it really helps to build that enthusiasm that we can do this, we can progress. So who? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves in terms of our club. As committee members, we can feel isolated or under pressure to make decisions or be responsible, and we might feel alone. But if we can look outside the square of who is involved in our club, we might be able to draw energy reserves or skills or capacity from outside of the direct committee, perhaps, if you're feeling like that's too small a number. It may be a good time to refresh your committee. I know a lot of clubs are due for their AGMs at the moment, so you might be able to reach out to some new people. The members, who are your members? A lot of what I struggle with local sporting clubs is they don't have the data. They don't know who their members are and what age they are, what postcode do they come from, and why are they there. So maybe have a look at your data and how you can analyse that. Families, we talk a lot in community sport about the need to involve whole families. So a cricket club isn't just about the senior men's team, it's about bringing the kids down to watch. It's about the Milo cricket program or the past players who come and score. So thinking about the broader vision for your club and who are the families that are going to be behind you. The supporters, so that may include professional people like RSA staff. It might also include sponsors, council staff, local community members, people that are really passionate about your club. And then we need to talk about consultation. And I know that this is something that's sort of thought about in terms of someone else does the consultation, but really clubs can drive their own discussions internally. So it really means how are you going to talk to your members and ask them what they think and what they would like to see the club develop into the future. So how you might talk to them, you might be able to do a Survey Monkey survey, which is quite simple, and people like myself can help with that. You can just call your members or your committee or your coaches and record down what they're saying. You can use Facebook and do Facebook polls or things like that. Messenger groups can be a great way to have interaction, regular and small bite-sized pieces to keep the discussion going. And there's lots of interesting Facebook posts as well to build engagement too at the moment. We need to think about who our board or committee may be or our leaders are. And do we have diversity? Do we have women involved? Do we have young people? Do we have multicultural backgrounds? Do we have new professional people that have just moved to the local area that have a contribution to make? Because collaborating through this time is going to be critical, and we want to hear ideas from a broad range of people, not just the same people that have always been involved. And the message for the who here is come with us, help us, buy into it. I saw a fantastic Facebook post from a sporting club last night saying, we need you now. Don't look or just don't assume someone else is going to step up to the challenge now. Let's you put up your hand and please come and help us. And they listed out a set of roles that they're looking for help with. And when we're talking about consultation, people often worry about the vocal minority. So they don't want to do a survey, or they don't want to ask people what people think, because they're worried about what they're going to say. There is always going to be the 1 or 2% that's going to be negative, and I'm sure you've probably heard those people already during this difficult time. But if you ask the broad perspective, and I've seen this in so many different surveys that I've run for clubs, you will hear the fantastic messages about your club, what they love about it, what they want to share with you, what they want to contribute to. So those lessons or that information will be invaluable, and you'll actually find it invigorating as well. So SWOT analysis, you've probably heard the term before. It's a key part of all strategic plans. It's never done. And now more than ever, it needs to be updated. If you have a SWOT analysis in a strategic plan, then it's probably a good time to update it and probably revisit it in 1 month, 3 months at the moment, because the factors affecting a SWOT analysis are changing. And I've stolen a quote here from Bridie O'Donnell, the director for the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation, in a webinar that I was watching. She said, don't just bounce back, bounce forward. This is how I want you to approach this exercise. We don't want to go back to how we were. We want to look into the future and be even better than what we were before. So the strengths, that's the easy part. What do we do well? What has our club been known for? What is our reputation? And that directly links to the why. You'll find quite clearly why the club exists. It's about community, it's about families, it's about sport, it's about participation, the love of the game. So that'll come through in your strengths. The next part is the weaknesses. So some of the things to consider at the moment is that there's just so much still unknown. And I know that's a lot to worry about, but I think at the moment we're really progressing in the different easing of restrictions, and it's becoming clearer about what the return to play will be. We don't know how much capacity, what skills we'll have or need, what the energy or willingness of the committee is going to be like, but taking these first steps will hopefully help you understand what that resource level might be. We also don't know what our revenue streams are, but we had the webinar session last week, the RSV session on financial management, and there was some really great suggestions on that, on how you could really predict or forecast your budgets moving forward. So what opportunities are we looking at or considering? Also, Bridie talks a lot about this as well. This is a perfect time to increase diversity at your club. Think about who's never been involved or touched your club before, and think about how you might embrace them into the new forward vision for the club. Embrace new ways of doing business. Think about how you might connect with your members online in these types of meetings or sessions on Facebook, or in different types of physical activity. There's certainly a ton of new grant opportunities coming out, which, following our Facebook pages, you'll definitely be able to follow those and be aware, and they're not going to be difficult, and they really present opportunities for clubs. As I mentioned before, maybe it's a time for a board refresh, and it's okay. We're telling our clubs that we're talking to, it is okay if board members are willing to step or wanting to step down now. If it's not the right time for them to volunteer, perhaps that might make way for some new people. And also being prepared will help you feel more confident and ready for what the next steps might be. So the threats, I'm not going to dwell on these too much because I'm a positive thinker. Yes, sporting clubs do have to think about risk management and hand sanitizer and process. We are worried about the sport structures and the staff availability in state sporting associations, or who may or may not be available to help us. We are unsure about the council facilities or DELT facilities or committees of management, and how they'll be able to modify them or use them in the future to meet the club's needs. There'll be some legal obligations moving forward, and probably most of us have already been thinking about club sustainability anyway. So asking ourselves the questions about what the sports structure will look like and what clubs will need to do to be more modern and adaptive to the new environment. So thinking about who will be here in the years to come and how to plan for that. So as I mentioned, this SWOT analysis will change, and this SWOT analysis is really what you need to use to guide the next step of the planning process. So goals. So in strategic planning processes, often we can get worried, like I mentioned, about the terminology, the vision, the mission, the purpose. Similarly, we can be worried about pillars, cornerstones, objectives, themes, just depending on what language perhaps the consultant or the different people that you're working with on strategic plans. Don't let language be a barrier. Describe your goals any way you like. What motivates or resonates with you is totally fine. And you'll see that there's a lot of crossover in community sporting clubs. You can have goal areas or values that will cross over. So for example, this first column, we've got governance and leadership. They could be together, they could be separate. It's about developing the culture of your club. What do you want it to stand for? What is it about? What type of behaviour do we like to see? Who are the people involved? Our committee, our governance structure, our members, who are our partners or supporters, risk management. So there should be some sort of consideration in your plan about that. And what sort of processes do you need? Often with planning processes, if you've done a club health check or a similar process with an SSA staff member, you might have a whole list of documentation that you might need to develop. A strategic plan isn't a list of those, but it's identifying that, yes, we've got some goals that we like to improve our processes or our documentation. Sustainability. So this is a key one to look at. What does sustainable mean? Is it a financial decision-making process? Is it how we make decisions as a governance structure and who and how should be involved and the authority of those people to be involved? And accountability and transparency, and meeting procedures and club processes are really a key thing to look at about setting a framework for your planning in the future. So how are we going to go step by step? So you might like to define what it is that you're going to do to achieve that. And regional sports assemblies, this is our number one focus. So we'd be happy to see most of your plan focus on this. Participation, how are we going to engage with more volunteers? How are we going to train them, support them, develop them? Members, who are they? How can we get more members, retain them, bring their families and their friends along as well? Yes, our traditional sporting structures might not exist this year, but maybe we can run a social program in AFL 9s or a run around the oval, a kick to kick. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. Community sport is people getting together and enjoying sport together. So what other ways can we do that? And engagement. So right now clubs can have specific goals about their social media or the way that they talk to their members as well. So as I mentioned, there's lots of crossover areas, but it's also good to have streamlined objectives that you're looking at as well. And you can also think about what the structure of this might look like based on your subcommittees or perhaps roles that you might have on your committee. So you might have a coaching director in your club, so you might develop some coaching themes or participation themes under that heading. It doesn't matter what it looks like. And we need to have the governance responsibilities included as high-level objectives, because you might have new committee members come along to your meetings and you can set out what it is that you're trying to achieve at your meetings, and that can help keep you on track and how you make your decisions as well. Having inclusive meetings or a diverse board, it's really important to have good meeting structures so everyone feels like that they can have a say and it's a safe environment to do so. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, we would like to prioritise or set a time frame for some of the objectives in our plan. A normal strategic planning process that I would do would take 3 to 5 months, and we would thrash this out in a lot of detail, but we're not going to ask you to do that right now. We're going to ask you to narrow the list down to probably your shorter term priorities. We want you to be realistic and consider the resource level that you have available to you. There's no point writing a list of 100 things that you would like to do, and it's just going to be overwhelming and probably not get the buy-in from the members that you need. So let's have a realistic level. So some of the short-term objectives, which I would think is going to be in the next up to 12-month period, obviously looking at your return to play documentation and how it applies to you in your sport. Engage with your local league, association, or just in your club about what your competition structure might look like. Jump on those grant opportunities, so be aware, get all that information ready that you need. What financial triggers do you need to be aware of right now to help your board or committee make the decisions? What are your priorities for member engagement? How are you going to do it? And how is it going to connect with your longer term goals? Nail down that meeting format, like I mentioned before, so it's efficient use of your time and everyone feels valued and able to contribute. And when councils, sports, regional sports assemblies are asking for your feedback, please tell them, get on board, because that's going to shape the future of what our sport looks like, and we really need you to get involved. So that's the short-term priorities. And also, I mean, obviously there's some clubs that have contractual, more significant financial obligations that you might need legal and financial advice as well. Longer term, I'll just touch on these. Bigger picture, you're going to be contributing to the future or development of the sport structure that you're in. It might be, for example, in our area, local cricket associations had already reinvigorated their sport by moving junior competition to a Monday night. Perhaps that might be something that might be considered. How you're going to retain or support the people that have stayed with you, and then how you're going to re-engage the members that perhaps you just need a little bit of prompting to come back, and really thank those supporters. Do some longer term financial modelling, so budget forecasts. Build on those partnerships, work with your council, regional sports assemblies and your funding bodies. And then train your staff, your volunteers with documentation like role descriptions and things like that. And then the longer term, so longer term, you know, after 3 years perhaps, if you're on top of things, or if you've got staff resource, then you can perhaps look at some more formal strategic planning, growing your participation numbers, policy and process improvements. And I did put facility advocacy in this one, in that I think it's important to mention that often I meet with sporting clubs and they really are driven by needing that facility improvement. And what I like to say is that it's important to nominate one person on your committee who can perhaps focus energy and time on that. Other than that, the committee needs to focus on the running of sport, and growing participation and engaging with your community and all the values you're talking about in your strategic plan are the best ways to secure long-term facility investment. So you're not wasting your time and effort. It's really a good investment in time, but it's not a right time to focus on facility improvements. Yes, day-to-day issues, but in terms of securing some of your bigger projects, that's going to take a lot of time and energy. So at the start of the planning process, it can be helpful to think about, what does success look like for you? Perhaps you as a volunteer, as a committee member, your broader committee, or for your members, how do we know we've done what we set out to do? And it comes back to that vision statement really about we've been sustainable, we've kept engaged with our members, we've offered some sort of sport and physical activity, we have connected with our partners and supporters and sponsors, and there's some of the things you might want to think about as actions. And then the action plan really should be around, it doesn't matter what it looks like. You can have an Excel spreadsheet, you can have a Word document, but we need some columns in there that considers what priority is it, whose responsibility is it, what time frame perhaps might you set for it, and measurable as well. So how many more members, or how many teams, or how many social media posts that we're going to look at. Sport, if you've been attending some webinars lately, we've been talking about a lot in sport. Tell your story. Why is it important to your community, to your members, and reflect that why message. So clubs aren't often very good at collecting images or photos of their club in action, but they really do tell the story. So I've got an example of a one-page strategic plan. So the Yarragon Football Netball Club here, they had a report or a strategic plan document, and this was just a one-page summary that highlighted their objectives, who their partners were, what the vision was, and you can see we've got the men and the women there. And you can promote that on social media, you can send it to your sponsors, you can use it as just a one-pager that can really show what your club is about. And then whatever document you develop, so your action plan template or your strategic plan in your Excel or your Word document, think about who your audience is, your committee, your members, your funding bodies. So think about what type of information they would like to see and include that in there as well. and you want it to be simple and succinct with photos. If you've got someone good at graphic design, obviously that can look really catchy and sells a really good message as well. So I've got a few key messages to think about as we come towards the end of this session. Think about what you can control. So there's a lot of things that are overwhelming and probably outside of your control at the moment, the timeframes and the facility access and things like that. But think about what you can do and put those in your plan and start working away or chipping away at those. And you need to write actions that are flexible and adaptable, because these timeframes or things you can't control are going to move over the course of the coming months. Like I've mentioned before, create a diverse board and encourage diverse thinking. So that's asking people who have never been involved before whether they'd like to come along. We're thinking perhaps there's some people that are unemployed, professional people, or retired people in your community who might be willing to contribute because they have a love of the game or the sport or the club or your community, and they might be willing to help you through this difficult time. And even a short-term commitment of a 3-month or a 6-month might be all the difference that you need. Don't fall back to the way you've always done things. I know it's going to be tempting because I've been at lots of committee meetings and everyone says, we don't do it like that here. We've tried that. We've been there. But try and cut that out of your planning sessions and look at the way you can modernise meetings and ask ideas and shape them into new concepts moving forward. Develop your strategies around the resource level available. So do you have paid staff? Do you have other supporters that perhaps could do some work on the side? Do you have volunteers that have capacity to lead special projects on the side? Be mindful of conflicts of interest, in that there will be people wanting to push their own agendas during this time who have loud opinions, and it's important to have a committee structure and a meeting process that is aware that you need to work through the bigger picture, and be careful to keep away from politics and messaging that's not very supportive of your goals or where you're trying to achieve, things you're trying to achieve. Ask questions. Don't just accept the status quo. Think about what your members' wants and needs are. Often we talk to clubs at the moment. We're doing some questions with clubs and they're talking to us about money. And we're like, well, what do your members want from your club? Do they need a kiosk running? Would they be happy just to turn up and have a run around and see the coaches face to face? They might surprise you. They might want different things than what you're expecting. And continue to ask them what they're interested in and what motivates them and inspires them to get involved with your club. And set timelines for tasks and decisions. So when you have a meeting, have a short meeting, have some set actions, send them out straight away. Don't worry about minutes in detail. Send out an action plan and report back in 2 weeks and keep the momentum going from the planning work that you're doing. Who can help? So there's a bit of a list there. The information is fast moving at the moment. So it's really important that you're staying connected with your sport. So your league or association, regional sports assemblies, state sporting associations or club help website, local government staff and the councillors, health services, Sport and Recreation Victoria or different grants programs. Call them, ask for help, we're here. And community, think outside the square. Facility managers, other sporting clubs that share your ground or reserves, schools, and those new volunteers that perhaps you've never thought of who might be able to contribute to your club in different ways that you've never used them for in the past. And that's it. So we've moved on to the exciting part of the night where you guys get to ask me some questions.
Okay, so I'll take it from here, Michelle. We've had a couple of questions come through. As I mentioned, we also have a few which were sent through previously. The first one I think you've kind of covered already in what do you recommend club committees should do right here, right now? You mentioned things along the lines of return to play and competitions, grant opportunities, financial decision making, member engagement. Is there anything that you would pick as the priority area?
Definitely keeping up to date with the resources that are coming out at the moment, in that the state sporting associations are really only just releasing their documentation, and some of that has already needed to be updated based on the announcements that are just taking place. So it's important to keep up to date with those and circulating them through your committee and having the open discussion about that.
Sounds good. All right, I can probably give you a break for the next one if you like, because I can take this one. The next question is along member engagement and keeping connected to your members, but it's key. Jack is interested in some of the innovative ways that clubs are staying connected with their members, and is there anyone running virtual competitions? So, Jack, just from my point of view, I'm president of a football netball club here in Gippsland. We've probably been engaging with our members almost as much as what we would be if we were normal in the season, obviously via virtual means rather than physical. Just some ideas with our football netball club. We probably do 4 posts a week still. Things like obviously looking after your sponsors. So we're trying to make sure we're advertising menus for our local pubs and things like that. We've been posting links to previous grand finals along the lines of missing your footy or missing your netball. Click the link and check out our grand final from a couple of years ago. Putting pictures of our players up and going, who's looking forward to seeing these girls run out in the court again? Things like that. We've also got things we've been running on a Thursday night. So instead of the normal selection night, we've been having virtual selections. So just a bit of a fun time, really. We make up teams. I give a bit of a presence report. Everyone uploads pictures of their meals and shows what they're eating. So it's kind of like a Thursday night dinner, which would normally occur. We've also been running virtual challenges online as well, and virtual training sessions. So there's plenty of ways you can engage with your members, even if you can't see them physically. Michelle, you might want to elaborate on the virtual competition that Gippsport ran on the weekend.
Yes, so over the weekend we ran a 30-minute virtual challenge. So people could enter and compete either running, walking, cycling, exercising in their backyard. They just needed to record 30 minutes of exercise and then share it with us on our social media. So we saw some fantastic photos, and it was a great way for them to engage with our Facebook pages and hopefully inspire other people to try physical activity on their weekends or when they have some free time.
Okay, the next one I've got here is in regards to state government grants being only for not-for-profit sports organisations. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, Michelle, but what about indoor sports centres which have been closed for the last 2 months and will be closed for another month? Have you heard of anything that can support them?
So I presume that question might be around a council indoor leisure centre or something like that.
I expect so. Yeah, has not more detail.
Okay, so perhaps I'll just target on a club that uses an indoor sporting facility. So the club itself obviously is a not-for-profit, so they can apply for the grants. And the state government has just released a new funding program yesterday, so you can follow the Regional Sports Assemblies pages to get information there. In terms of if you're not in the not-for-profit category, then probably the best thing to do then is the council themselves or the local governments have their own range of recovery packages available or grant programs. So you'll need to go to your local council website and they've got the grant guidelines for those for you there.
Sounds good. I'll go to a couple of the emails we received during the weeks. The first one is consultation with members is really important but difficult when the club is not holding traditional training sessions or having games. How can we do this?
Yeah, fantastic. I think, Ryan, you actually did one of these surveys with your members about asking them who was willing or available to come back to training, because as a president, you were trying to make some decisions about how you might respond to the league or AFL about what you're planning on doing. So yeah, just doing a quick survey, monkey survey, or a Facebook poll could be a way to engage with members and get them talking about what it is that you're interested or the information you're needing to know. Like I mentioned before, you can have Messenger Facebook groups for discussion. TMAP now has polls on it as well. So depending on what your club communication platform is, you might be able to use that. And now where some sports are returning to face-to-face training in small numbers, so there might be some face-to-face engagement. The other sports, say for example a basketball association, they have coaches. So I mean, they have a lot of coaches and team managers, so perhaps you might have a targeted discussion with them about changes you're looking to make, or what impact the new rules might have on how they might run their basketball. So just think about how you might do targeted consultation with different groups of people within your club.
Sounds good, and you're certainly right. I did do a survey during the week, and I've actually got to pop onto a league meeting after this and represent the club's point of view. So it's good to know exactly where all our members stand. Our next question is in regards to a strategic plan. If you've already got one, do you need a new one?
Yeah, so a lot of work goes into a strategic plan. It can take, like I mentioned, quite a few months to develop it, or you might have received a grant to develop it. So you don't want it to be out of date straight away, which I understand. So there's definitely key parts of your plan that you should revisit right now. Hopefully your vision and your purpose and your values remains true, but it's a good check-in, especially if you've got new members involved in your club, about is this still what we're about or what we're planning to do over the next 12 months. And then we need to perhaps update that SWOT analysis. So what are the new things that are impacting on the club because of COVID-19, and perhaps update some of the actions, which you'll find that most strategic plans have actions with timeframes that are quite fluid. So it might be a priority or it might be a year, and you do expect to have some movement between those columns, because we need to predict, or it's difficult to predict times like these. So you do need to be able to adapt your strategic plan. So yes, they're still valuable, and it's a good time to revisit them. And then if you don't have one, perhaps you could just start off with this simple planning process that we've gone through tonight, and then look towards a more detailed plan a little bit down the track.
Sounds good. Okay, I've just got a couple more to get through, and I'll just check the message feed again. But first of all, with so many rules in place, how can a club make sure that its governance or risk management requirements are being planned for appropriately?
Yes. So this is where you really need to involve or consult with your supporters or your stakeholders. So your state sporting association, following their documentation, in some instances, you will need their permission or sign off on different things you're planning. You need to check in with your facility owner or manager as part of that process as well. So checking in with what guidelines and that are going to apply. And so that was the question. So how do you make sure? Yeah, so they're the main things you need to do right now. There's broader governance type processes that you need to be aware of when you're on a volunteer committee that do need to be in your plan. And regional sports assemblies, they do one-to-one club support, and they're the perfect people to talk to. So how do you find your constitution? When is our end of financial year ending, or when do we have to run our AGM, or how do we make decisions? So we've got an issue of conflict. How do we deal with that? So, club help or direct one-to-one support is the great way to get the help that you need. We've got lots of templates and things like that.
Perfect. Just going back, Katrina's asked a question which I can handle again. Mish, she organised a survey for club members, but no one completed it, which I understand. I've been there, and it can be very frustrating at times. Any suggestions to get them to fill it out? Honestly, we were similar. We had members that would they don't fill surveys out. So really, I put an announcement out just saying how important it was to get this survey completed. That it was, for us to make the right decisions based on the interests of our club, we really needed to know, and we organised different ways of getting the survey. There was an email out, there was posts on Facebook. We actually even did old school posts to a few of the old members to make sure that they got it, and I come and collected it from them. So, and once again, not everyone has to do it, but mainly we use the percentages. So of the, say, the 57 that completed, it gave us a bit of a percentage of how many people were interested in definitely going ahead for the year, how many just wanted to sit and wait. So we really use those percentages more than anything. It's very, very difficult to get all your members to complete a survey. I can agree with that. And one, sorry, that's something to add there, Mish?
And a prize.
Yes.
Prize definitely helps.
That sounds right. Always a bit of chocolate or something. Last question I had here was in regards to a conversation I had about new ways of doing things. What type of things would you recommend in the short term?
So the new ways of doing things, definitely webinars or online meetings. So we can upskill our volunteers. There's so many different types of webinars happening at the moment that we can train our volunteers and broaden their understanding of what the issues and opportunities are. So encouraging your members to do that. I did a Swimming Victoria officials training session on the weekend that only went for 45 minutes, and it was really helpful to refresh my skills and be connected to what I'll be returning to in the future. So yeah, I was quite excited about it. So yeah, webinars, online training, and then having a platform. I know we're all talking about it. GIPSport is, now that we've encouraged or set up meeting platforms online and train a range of clubs how to use them, I think this is going to be absolutely key in strengthening committees moving forward, because none of us like driving out in the cold and dark wet nights. And if we can have a meeting that takes an hour from our lounge room, that's going to be a really helpful step to especially engaging more professional people as well. We don't want to exclude anyone, but it's, you know, so we might need to offer some additional support to people perhaps who aren't as tech savvy. But yeah, definitely, I think quicker meetings is the way to go. And also, especially for women, if we want to engage with women who are at home with children, this is a perfect way to get them involved. And I guess we're all used to having kids running in and out of online meetings these days. So it's adds to the fun, the family connection with your club.
Sounds great. There's no more questions unless anyone wants to quickly get in one or two more quick ones. I think we have answered all to this point. So it is getting close to the hour, so unless there's any final questions, we might look at bringing things to a close there. I just wanted to acknowledge Michelle and thank her for doing her presentation tonight. We do consider her the guru of planning at GIPSport, so great to get her on board for this one. Hopefully you've all been able to get some sort of an insight to where you should be going ahead and get some key messages out of the session. A reminder that we have our third and final forum this Thursday at 7 p.m. In that session, we'll be looking at club member engagement and helping your members stay connected. And we actually talked a little bit about engagement just before, so you'll actually get a bit more detail around this if you log on Thursday night. So if you haven't already, make sure you register by the same means you did for this one. So unless there's any final questions, I think that's a good night from us, and good luck everyone in that ever-changing COVID-19 sporting landscape over the coming months. We wish you well. Cheers.